What's good, everybody? I'm Jędrek. He's Sodek.
Hello.
And today at Modern Solutions, which is not a very apt name in this case, we have our first Pioneer video for you. Let's dive into it. Okay, so ever since the organized playtime announcement almost 2 months ago, I would want to say, it was the end of March, so month and a half, closing in on 2. We've had some much increased interest in Pioneer in general. We've been meaning to start putting out Pioneer content, which will happen in a short time, maybe even in May. We'll see. And we started playing the format a bit. Not a terrible amount. We've had some modern tournaments late in April and early in May as well. I'm playing the Pro Tour this week. So I couldn't devote, neither could Sodek, completely into playing Pioneer. But I'm playing Pioneer once a week in paper. I haven't played much on Modo, but we've played some paper tournaments, so we know what's going on a bit.
I played a bit on MTGO, but since I was testing a lot of different stuff that maybe wasn't checked earlier, I was losing a lot at first. So it was quite disappointing for me that, for example, Colossus Hammer Sigarda Said combo is not that good or as good as I wanted it to be. But once I started playing more reasonable decks, and we'll get to this later, I got a bit better result, but still, nothing spectacular. But I hope that the more we play it and the more we understand what's going on, the better results we'll have.
Yep, definitely. So basically, how this video will look, because we don't have the same kind of in-depth knowledge that we have about Modern, in terms of Pioneer, it will be more of our impressions first, and I guess second as well, impressions of the format. We'll sort it out the decks that are kinda popular in 4 different groups. It will be good decks, which are, in our opinion, the couple best decks, or in this case 5/6. Then we have decks with potential, bad decks that people keep playing, which I think is the most important category to acknowledge, because then you can prevent yourself from making the mistake of playing any of those decks. And then finally, the category that we couldn't find a more elegant name than if your name is not XYZ, don't touch this deck, which is mostly for Pioneer grinders who've been playing the same deck for 2 years and only they could win with the deck ever. So yep. And then finally, after we go through all those decks, we will talk about cards that we'd like to see in the format, and some closing thoughts, some general impression that we didn't mention before, basically. Sounds good?
I like it.
Okay, dobra. So we'll start with good decks, as I've said, which are basically, if you want to win in Pioneer and you don't really know what's going on, we would recommend picking one of those decks and trying getting familiar with it. If you just have a tournament that you want to go to, I don't know, a paper 1 or 2K, and you want to get your money for gas back or your entry or something, play one of those decks, and you will probably have the best chance with some of those. Those decks are...
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Give me a second. And about these decks, what I like about them is that each of them represents a bit different playstyle. So it's relatively easy to find one that will at least be reasonable for you, because there isn't one much better strategy than everything else. They, at least for now, balance themselves. So at least this is a good starting point for the format, because it's opening up since the the decision about like restoring paper events and Pioneer. So let's go.
Yep. So those decks will be in order that they appear in on MTG Goldfish, because I just typed them in that order, so don't read too much into how I present them. And those decks are Winota, Mono Red, Mono Green Devotion, Red Black Midrange, and Expressive Iteration dot deck, either Blue Red Phoenix or Blue Red Control.
I also saw blue-red prowess decks, which
I
were
guess so.
kinda interesting, but they were like, after all, like for treasure cruise, for expressive iteration, and
It's like
the
basically
rest.
marrying Mono Red with Expressive Iteration a bit.
Yeah, something like this.
But yeah.
Yeah,
So starting with Winota, because it's first on the list, I guess.
yeah, and it's, in my opinion, the most annoying deck to play against, because in my opinion, the deck is extremely powerful only when it draws its namesake card, Winota. Outside that, the deck looks kinda bad, and this like difference between broken draws with Winota and having a very mediocre,
Mediocre.
yeah, thanks, deck like with some form of Naya mid range with a good top end in place of, sorry, in like Grave Titan. Like I don't remember his name.
Tovolar's Handmaster, I think.
Something like this,
But
like
we
six.
are calling it Grave Titan all the time. So.
It will be Grave Titan, Bart Green. And the fact that the deck can win without Winota is kind of nice, but like when it has it's really good draw, especially on the play, it's really hard to do anything. So at least from my experience, when I was trying to not touch Winota, it was kind of unfun, or like frustrating, because like someone, like quite often the game ended like ended in a spot when I just couldn't win against Winota, and I could win against anything else. So
So I guess it serves a kind of similar role to Hammer in Modern. Like if you don't interact with their board, this is the timeline for you to win the game. Like if you can't win consistently before Winota overpowers you, and you don't have interaction, your deck is probably not good. I
yes,
would say so. And also one other point, because you basically said everything that I think there is to be said about Winota.
sorry.
And that's no, and that's even better as a highlight to my point. Do you think that Winota is the simplest competitive deck that you've ever seen? Because I do think so. Like I think Winota is just play your non-humans, play Winota, attack. Winota seems extremely simple, like as far as Magic decks
Okay.
go.
I would say that the card Winota is really like straightforward and kind of brutal and stupid in terms of what's going on after it resolves. Like I feel it's a really bad designed card, because it does a bit too much for like a bit too fast, and the stats are a bit too good. Imagine Winota being 4-2. It would be widely played still, but it would be much easier to kill. Or imagine it triggers only one per turn. It would still be really good. Or imagine Winota triggering on attacks, or like anything else. Like this type of wording Winota has, like already, it's already proven that it's like format breaking, because like in Explorer, for example, so in like Pioneer
Light,
on
basically Pioneer Light.
yeah, Pioneer Light in Arena, like Winota is already banned, and there was a lot of discussion if Winota should be around in Pioneer. Uh, Personally, I think that Winota will eventually go, because it makes Wizards much like harder job to print new cards that will be playable in Pioneer. Because, for example, I strongly believe that there's a really good mid-range deck with like green white splash, maybe something. But because Winota exists, no one wants to try to find it because you have this "I win a game" button when you're playing Winota. So
Yep.
that
Yep.
happens. So well, for now we are living in a world when Winota is here. So like just be prepared. Have
Yeah.
a lot of removal or have a very cheap dedicated removal. For instance,
Red Cap Melee or
Red
Rending
Cap
Volley.
Rending
Probably two
Volley.
the best.
There's
Ray
a
of
Rai,
Enfeeblement.
yeah. There's a black one. So there are tools to stop it, but it's still sometimes you just can't keep your mana open all the time. And
Yep. Yeah, also to touch upon the design, I also don't like it that much. I do think that whenever you attack, triggers are on creatures are super powerful and very snowballing. I've been playing a lot of standard for okay. I've been watching a lot of standards my teammates were playing because I haven't played a single game of standard till the deck submission. I just trusted that
Nice.
my team got it, and I think they got it. I think our deck is very good. But a very important card in standard is Raffine Skimming Seal, which is played in Esper. And Raffine has the same template of whenever you attack, and it connives for each attacking creature on target. Target creature connives for each attacking creature, basically. And that makes 2-drop into Raffine something really, really strong. And it's very hard to come back from that. Like, also Raffine has ward 1, so like you can't even kill it off on curve if you're on the draw, unless you are playing like main deck Ray of Enfeeblement. So yeah, whenever you attack triggers, not my favorite. And I do think that Winota will eventually go. I think we'll say, or we'll talk a bit about bans in the end, possible bans, I guess. Okay, moving from Winota to Mono Red. I don't think there's much to say about Mono Red. Mono Red is basically the same deck whenever it's good. It just has efficient creatures, efficient burn spells. I don't think there's any single card that's worth highlighting in that deck. Maybe aside from Eidolon. Like, Eidolon is the type of card that whenever you have Eidolon in the format and the red deck is good, it puts a bunch of pressure on how much you can deal with spells.
True. I also like the addition of Kumano faces
Kazakan.
Kakazan.
Kakazan or Kazakan?
Yeah, Kakazan.
Karakan.
Yeah. I really like the concept of this 1-drop. Like it's like so far like the best designed 1-drop for red decks like I ever remember. Maybe Goblin Guide was kind of
It's very
like
cool. It's very well designed, I think.
Yeah, like Kamigawa, nice. About red, like it's a great deck to punish like trying to be cool, and if like too many players are trying to be cool and trying to do like wacky mid-rangey controlish stuff, then Mono Red just should dominate.
Especially
and
if they play a lot of colors, because Mana and Pioneer is not that great.
Yeah,
for like 3 colors.
Very painful because of, for example, Mana Confluence or a lot of lands under the battlefield tap. Still, if you like being aggressive and like having a very stable plan,
probably
Mono
your
Red
best
is,
bet.
Yeah,
to just play Mono Red. Okay, continuing on multi or monocolor decks, we have Mono Green Devotion, which is like a combo deck in which your combo is turn 1 Llanowar Elves into turn 2 Old Growth Troll. But you do have a combo finish, which is kinda convoluted. It's I guess I'll explain it to you if you are not familiar with the format. You are playing Karn the Great Creator and Kiora Behemoth Follower?
Beconner.
Behemoth Beconner, because every time I see this card is in Japanese, and because Canister has Japanese copies, and I'm mostly playing against Canister, and I just don't know how the card is called. And Kyora can untap a land, and Karn can minus to get an artifact from your sideboard or exile, which is important because you have an artifact in your sideboard called Pestilent Cauldron, which has a black side. It's from Strixhaven. The front side is black, and it has the like free abilities. But the one that's important is that you can tap it and I think pay some mana or not important, and target opponent or each opponent mills cards equal to the number of life you gain this turn.
Yes.
And the backside is sorcery for 5 mana, free green, and you can return up to 2 target planeswalkers, creatures, or lands from your graveyard, and each player gains 4 life. And it exiles itself, which is like you always had the dust close on like restock and similar effects, so you can loop them together. But because it's an artifact on the front, you can get it with Karn from exile. So if you have a situation in which you have 2 Karns and 2 Kyoras in total, like you have to have at least 1 Karn and Kyora in play, and then I guess the other ones eventually have to be in the graveyard, but you can just play and legend rule them, whatever. But if you have 2, one of each in play, one of each in graveyard, you have Nykthos, and you have at least, I think, 14 devotion, which sounds like a lot, but this deck generates devotion really fast. So it can happen very easily on like turn 5 or 6 or whatever. You can just target the both planeswalkers have in the graveyard with the restock part of the Pestilent Cauldron, get them back, play them, untap your lands with your Nykthos with Kyora, make mana, grab Pestilent Cauldron with Karn, restock again, and if you have enough devotion, once again I think it's 14, you start netting mana each time, and then eventually you will play the front half of Pestilent Cauldron and you will mill your opponent. Or if you have the Lair of the Hydra in play, you can untap it and kill your opponent because it would be arbitrarily large. And I don't know how, like, if most lists have that. Canister has 1 Overground Tomb and 1 Golos in the sideboard. So at the end, you can grab Golos with Karn, fetch for Tomb, untap it with Kyora, and that's the way you get black mana. Yeah, basically it's like you have this combo which can kill your opponent from most board states, but in reality you are like just play to the board devotion deck with Trolls, with Cavalier of Thorns, with Karn, with sometimes Nissa, who shakes the world. Once again, Canister has 1 in his deck and he always draws it against me. And a very important part of this deck is Storm the Festival from Innistrad Midnight Hunt, I think. For 6 mana, you look at top 5 cards of your deck. It's a sorcery. And you put up to 2 permanents with CMC 5 or less into play. And it has flashback for 10 mana, which once again sounds like a lot, but it's not in this deck. And then a bunch of like mana dorks, elves, Wolf Willow Haven. Just an incredibly powerful and very fast, like mid-range ramp hybrid, basically.
Yeah, like again, like the deck is quite straightforward, and you are mostly gold fishing, and you are trying to do your things. Like if your opponent is playing interaction, then you are doing your things a bit slower, but eventually you'll get there. You'll like play very big creatures or combo out with planeswalkers. If you, for example, get the Borstal, or if you are racing with the opponent and you are worried about their combo kill, then it's relatively easy to win that way. Again, this type of gameplay is kind of annoying for me because how the deck is really good with Nykthos and how the deck can stumble a bit if they don't have a Nykthos. It's not as
As night and day as we know is.
yeah. so like from like if we compare these two, mono green has much more play without Nykthos. Still, if you have it, like you can create like turn 1 elf, turn 2 Kiora into turn 3 a lot of things. So just beware that sometimes you lose to this type of opening and you can't do that much about it.
I
There's
think you
also
can. I think you can win on turn 3 if you get really lucky.
okay, like
it is possible for you to go infinite on turn 3. I think. Not sure, but I think so.
especially with Kioras and Nisa to untap Nykthos, then
Yeah, of course. You basically need to have Kira.
You can do like very wacky stuff, especially like if you flip well with Storm the Festival, etc., etc. About the deck, like sideboard is kind of interesting because it's mostly
Bullets for Karn.
locked. Yeah, like there are still with bullets for Karn. I saw some versions that are adding white, for example, for Portable Hall.
And
or like
Cloud Steel Kirin, I think people are playing
something
sometimes.
like this, like just
Yep.
to prevent the opponent from winning the game.
I think basically two, like the most common thing aside from current tutors in the sideboard are ways to kill thing in the ice, which is a problem for this deck sometimes. And people are playing either Voracious Hydra or the aforementioned Portable Holes, or I think Primal Might, the card is called. It's like X green, and your creature gets +X and then fights up to one target creature.
That was something like this.
So basically removal for thing in the ice.
Yeah.
Very, very straight. Like, it's not as straightforward as Winota, not too close. I think there's a bunch of decisions. You have to choose a card pretty often between like Oath of Nissa and Storm and Cavalier and yada yada yada. So you do have a bunch of decisions, but they usually amount to picking the card with most green devotion symbols.
True. Okay, but all these three decks were quite, like we mentioned already, are quite straightforward.
I don't know if mono red is straightforward, but Winota and mono green definitely the poster child for like straightforward.
Okay, mono red will love to like set up the pace of the game.
Oh, it's very proactive. That's definitely the case for all those.
Yeah, sometimes you can play a control role as a mono red player, but generally speaking, you want to be proactive and win as fast as possible. Two other decks or like group of decks that we are I want to show you are not as straightforward and not as
for the most
proactive.
part.
The first one is red black midrange, and this is the giant of this format. You're playing just a lot of good cards, a lot of 2-for-1s, and you are trying to outgrind the opponent.
You're playing WotC, which is really good in this format, I think.
Yes, it's at least much better than in modern.
Yeah,
that's
because
for sure.
Like you don't have that much quality 1 mana interactive spells in this format, or even 2 mana for that matter. And WotC is just, compared to your other options, it's just great. And you have Fatal Push, which is probably the best removal for 1 mana in the format. So
although activating Revolt, like in this deck, it's
very easy in general, but in this deck you have a bunch of treasures and blood tokens, so it's easier.
It's easier, but it's not as trivial as it was in modern.
Yeah, when I played blue-black, like blue-black rogues, you couldn't do it. Like the list that I copied had like 1 Fabled Passage or 0, and you literally couldn't activate Revolt without your thing dying, basically. So yeah, and not being able to activate Revolt with Winota in the format, not the best idea. But yeah, this is just a giant deck, basically in hard. 2 cards that really impressed me in the deck were Graveyard Trespasser, which is a 3 mana 3/3 with ward, discard a card, and when it enters the battlefield or attacks, you exile up to 1 target card from the graveyard or opponent's graveyard, and if you exile a creature this way, you gain 1 and they lose 1. And it has day-bound, night-bound mechanics, so when it flips, it's a 4/4 with the same ward, and when it attacks or enters the battlefield, I guess, you exile up to 2 cards, and for each exiled creature, you once again drain. Ward discard a card is very strong. Like, it's an inherent 2-for-1, especially since there are no good counter magic in the format, so you basically never can counter it. It has to resolve, and then you have to spew 2 cards, unless you have like Anger of the Gods or something. But yeah, also Fable of the Mirror Breaker, just a really good card.
Incredible, really.
It does a lot of different things.
Very, it makes strong. It glues this whole deck together, because like there are multiple matchups where, for example, your Fatal Push won't be that good because you're playing versus blue-white controller Lotus Field, and then you can just throw discard it and get 2 boys in the process. Like we missed this card so much. Like when we were talking about Kamigawa, and it turned out the deck is extremely powerful. Still, it's a really typical 2-for-1 deck. So if you are playing a lot of mid range or like value-oriented magic, this deck would be totally for you.
Yes. Also, great manlands. The Adventure in Forgotten Realms manlands, kind of too slow for Modern. You still see them sometimes, but in this format, they are really, really good. You activate them very often, and they just give you this additional value from your lands. Very, very strong.
Yeah, Treetop Village from in 2023.
Treetop Village would be insane.
Yeah, that's true.
And last but not least, we have blue-red decks, Phoenix and Control. So Phoenix is more of a like combo deck in this format. Like you are playing the Temporal Trespass, which is the Delve Time Walk, and you play Galvanic Iteration to fork it. So it's more of a like, it's not a combo deck in the like Storm vein, but it's more of a like twin vein. Like you have a bunch of cantrips, a bunch of like removal spells, ways to slow them down, yada yada yada. But in the end, you want to fork your Time Walk and bring back Phoenixes and just attack twice or 3 times even because you fork your Time Walk. And then you have Thing in the Eyes, which is like a very, very good card against part of the format and bad card against the other part of the format. So sometimes it's played in the sideboard or not at all. Also, people have been playing Ledger Shredder in this deck. I'm kind of skeptical as long as Narset is popular. But I was wrong about Ledger Shredder. It's a really, really good card. We don't have time today to focus on that, but we'll address Ledger Shredder at some point. Maybe we'll even make a separate Ledger Shredder video next week. We'll see.
Yeah, like the card sees a lot of play, and what's interesting, it serves a different roles in Modern and Pioneer, and it's kind of cool to see this type of design. About Blue-Red, there's also Control. Like maybe you should. Like you was playing Control a lot.
Yeah, I don't want to say too much. When I write my first text about Pioneer, it will definitely at least remark Blue-Red Control, because it's been the deck that I've played by far the most in this format so far. So all my opinions about cards and stuff will be in that article, and we can just move to the next category. The only one thing I really, really need to mention is that you should play some Days Undoing, because just playing for Defiance is really bad, I think. Okay, just split those 2 and 2, whatever. Okay, moving on to decks with potential. We will just mention them briefly, because I haven't seen those in action, so I don't really know how they play, but just looking from the lists, they looked okay. So I will just list them, and then if you want to say anything about any of them after I'm done, you can say something. We have Mono Blue Spirits, we have Red White Heroic, Greasefang, various versions of Greasefang, Esper, Mardu. I personally, I think I like Mardu the most. And then we have Humans with a question mark, both because I don't know if Humans are really that good, and I don't really know what colors are they. Like, are they like Naya, green, white, black, white, black, whatever?
Band can be.
Like, you do have a bunch of those, because you have Secluded Courtyard and Unclaimed Territory, so you have 8 rainbow lands for Humans.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, still, like the mana base is the biggest problem for humans deck.
Okay.
About all these decks, they are like they have a few things like that are in common for them. First and most important thing, they are proactive and they are trying to do their things quite fast. Like Mono Blue Spirits are trying to uh, to interact in some way, so they are really good at punish like slower decks because of their cheap counter magic. Red White Heroic is a like cool way to attack, like similar to Infect in Modern, in my opinion, from old times. The deck maybe is more fragile and can be stopped with a creature removal, but on the other hand, if someone does not have it, then it turns the corner very quickly. About Greasefang is a deck that's kinda like a mystery for me because like the combo can be stopped in many different ways. It can be attacked like as a creature removal for Greasefang. You can attack like artifact hate for Parhelion. You can attack graveyard. You can even play Karn and use static to like uh, not let to crew, etc. But still, the deck can kill out of nowhere, and if it's supported with other good cards, then like sometimes you combo out often enough to still wins. About humans, I think the deck has a potential, but it's really hard to find a really good list. Still, like I hope that someone, maybe probably not me, but someone will find the way.
Okay, so um, out of all those 4 decks, the deck that I am by far the most excited about are Mono Blue Spirits. And the main reason is what we already mentioned a few times in this video, mana. Mana in Pioneer is kinda decent if you are playing 2 colors, but not always. And we will get to that later on. And it's not good almost at all if you are playing 3 colors. Like you have to play 12 pathways in Winota, and that's not great. So having the mana base of just islands and Faceless Haven, it's a real boon. Faceless Haven even tap for snow mana, so your Ascendant Spirit can level up, quote unquote, from it. So that's really good, and you get to play a bunch of good one drops. You have a lot of flyers, and you have 2 pretty great counter spells in the format that's devoid of counter magic for the most part. Because you have Lofty Denial, which is 1 blue counter unless they pay 1, or if you have a flying creature unless they pay 4. And then you have the Geistlit Snare, I think the card is called, which is a 3 mana leak, but it's 1 cheaper if you control a spirit and 1 cheaper if you control an enchantment. So it can be 1 mana leak, which is obviously insane. But yeah, now we will move on to the category that we already mentioned is the most important, which is bad decks that people keep playing. And we'll do the same thing that we just did. Just I will run through those decks, and then Sodek will give his impressions, and then I will. 2 decks that I think are the most important ones on this list because they were very popular and you shouldn't play them, in our opinion, right now, or maybe ever. Are Lotus and Blue White Control. And then we have Jan/Red Black Sacrifice and Jeskai Ascendancy combo. Okay, so Sodek, tell us what you think
Okay.
of them.
I spent a lot of time playing Lotus Field, and the deck has its moments when you have Arboreal Grazer into Lotus plus Thespian Stage, sometimes with Sylvan Scrying, sometimes not. You have a like really cool looking 10-4 combo kill, and that's something that's unique compared to other decks in the format. That's cool, etc. But there are 2 problems. First, you don't always have all these pieces, especially with Grazer, and 2, it's okay about the first point. And if you don't have everyone like every piece, it's really easy to just kill you with like bunch of random creatures. And second point is that it's really easy to hate out the deck because you can just play Dumping Sphere, and it's really hard to play around it because like it's it's really hard to play Lotus Field, sacrifice to land, and then still to keep an untapped land to deal with like resolve Dumping Sphere after you play Lotus Field. So you at some point you will always be behind on mana, and if you also want to keep Thespian stage, then you need to have yet another lands, and that's like kind of problematic. About two others, Jant slash Herbal Sacrifice. Mm, like the deck looks like it should be good, and for example, in the meta game, goes into very creature heavy with like more blue spirits, heroic, greasefang, etc. Then I see Mayhem Devil making a comeback. Right now, I don't see I don't see this movement, at least not strong enough, and I wouldn't touch the deck. Ascendancy is a typical uh, deck that looks really cool in paper, but in practice you have like just your mana base is too bad. You are playing a 4-color deck that plays a lot of tap lands and loses too often to itself, and I don't recommend this type of playing. Especially when you have really good mono decks or like 2-color decks that are doing kinda the same thing but just more stable.
Yep. So Sotek basically said what it needs to be said about Lotus. I think that the fact that you all often lose. Like you're playing against red black and they forces you on one, and then they play a 3 powered creature into 4 powered creature. They have a good chance to kill you, which is like
That's it.
embarrassing.
Yeah,
Which is super
that's the
embarrassing.
worst.
That your combo deck is just raised by a mid range deck, which
Yeah, and
shouldn't happen.
like everyone says that red black midrange is a really good matchup for Lotus. Like in practice, it's not because they are playing 8 copies of this card and any form of creatures. If red black keeps just interaction, sure you can eventually win like top deck your game winning spell when once you have mana, but that's not happening all that often
Yep.
when you're losing.
Yeah.
Maybe you want to say something about blue white because
Yeah. Like I think it's like even harsher testament for how much I dislike blue white in modern when I see that basically the same deck, because we are playing mostly the same cards in Pioneer and Modern, is still too clunky for the format. So much less powerful than Modern. Of course, you don't have Counterspell and you don't have Ending, which are like really, 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 really important cards. But still, like this deck is clunky, and blue red is just a better control deck. Like it deals better with what format is about. The best sweeper in the format is Thing in the Eyes, and it's basically the best anti-creature measure in the format. If you want to deal with like Phoenix, you want to exile it, and then you have Flameless Bolt in blue red and Anger in blue red, and you have like 6 mana Farewell in blue white, which is like embarrassing. I just think that blue white is a deck that people have been playing because people have been playing blue white in Pioneer ever since it was found. And back then you had also the Fairy Time Raveler, which is a messed up card that you can't play anymore, thankfully. And yeah, I think we'll talk a bit about like Lotus and blue white in a larger context later on. About Jant, Sacrifice, and Red Black, I think they are like, if you want to play Blood Crypt in your deck, I would just play Red Black midrange for now, which is like the worst version of a deck argument that I like to cite because I really don't like playing worse versions of deck. And then Ascendancy, as Sodek said, mana is clunky, and I think the presence of Narset in the format makes it a liability. Like as long as 4 Narset blue red control is popular, I wouldn't play decks that rely on like looting effects. And as I've said before, that's one of the reasons why I think Ledger Shredder is not as good as Pioneer as it is like in older format like Modern or Legacy or I don't know, Historic Arena or whatever.
Commander.
Commander. Yeah. I even saw it in Vintage. Okay, so then the final category that we won't really talk about, but I want to highlight those decks is if your name is not XYZ, don't touch those decks. And it's Niv Mizzet, which only Claudio can pilot and win, and Claudio is super sick on Niv Mizzet. It's blue black. Harry 13 played a lot of blue black back in the day. Also Zerk or Xerk, the residing Polish national champion. And then Green White Angels, also a deck that Zerk played a lot.
Also Arados, I guess.
Ardos, yeah.
Ardos.
Ardos is a friend of Wojtek, so they just do most of their magic testing together, I think. So
yeah,
yep.
like from these three, I think that Angels have the biggest potential to come back because
I think
of the
Niv
new.
is like. I think Niv Mizzet just like how important it is not to scare off your Narcomoebas in Dredge, so they flow to the top and you mill them. I think Niv Mizzet like feels if you're not Claudio, if you are playing the deck, your Niv Mizzet will just run away from you to the bottom of your deck and you will never find them.
That's sad.
Okay, so to sum it all up, general impressions with the format Sodek, like one sentence or maybe one thought, like first thing that comes to your mind.
So okay, I have two, and I will say
Okay,
both of them.
go.
First is like I'm a Modern player. I was playing Modern a lot in my life, and like when I started playing,
I just want to say something. I think it's even more pronounced now because of pandemic. I don't think that either you or me played any constructed Magic but Modern for the last 2 years at all.
I was playing Standard because of the Players Tour Arena 4.
Yeah, because it was like for 2 weeks or something, right?
Yeah.
But like we have been just playing Modern, and ever since Modern Horizons 2, we only played Modern, both of us, just Modern. So
and
it's hard to find yourself in other formats, I think, now.
Yeah, like the biggest difference for me was the lack of free spells in the format. Like the fact that you need to have like mana for everything was kind of like strange. Also, like every time the blue deck had mana open, I was scared about counter magic. But like after I started looking at deck list, no one had them. It was kind of strange. And overall, the format, like it's opening up week after week. New decks are having results. Like it's like compared it to 2 months ago, like when Blue, White, and Lotus were considered as the best deck in the format. Nowadays, Mono Green came back. Now Red, White, Heroic is doing moves. Greasefang is always somewhere around, still mid-range. Phoenix, like all these decks are better and better. People are finding the best lists and adaptations to the changing metagame. Still, I'm a bit skeptical about the gameplay because like quite often it looks like two ships passing, something like this.
Passing at night, yeah.
Yeah, and there's not a lot of like room for interaction. And I'm a player that is not interested in interaction at all, but I like to compete with my non-interactive decks versus the decks that wants to interact. That's, for example, for me is the most interesting Magic to play. And I kind of feel like, for example, Winota versus Mono Green, like being on the play matters so much, and it's really hard to find like very important like moments. Like Karn going for Grafdigger's Cage, that's probably the most important one.
Yes.
Overall, the format looks better and better. I still like Modern Mon, and it won't probably change ever. But I started to find decks that are like cool enough to try out. Not something like Hammer, but like Heroic, like Greasefunk. These decks are something that I would like to play. How about you, Jędrek?
Okay, so the first most important thing in my opinion, is like people have been really excited about Pioneer, especially Pioneer players who were excited about more people playing their format and becomes more popular, more support and everything. But I do think that it also poses some danger for those people in terms of their favorite deck being either just broken at some point and they will ban it or whatever, or just their deck will become unplayable because a lot of new people will come to the format and this influx of players, especially pro players, once we have like PT and regional championships and everything like that. Like people who've been paid all their lives for breaking or to break the formats and to find the best decks are very good at, as we say that in Poland as well, sorting out wheat from the chaff. And the nice decks, the good decks, will float up on top of the format, and the bad decks will just sink. And I think Lotus and Blue White are those type of decks, for example, that will just sink. People won't play them, like unless it's a like weird meta call. But I don't think those decks are up on the power level of the format. Second thing is a mana discrepancy in this format, which I think is super obnoxious. And the 5 most important cards to reprint in this format are 5 fast lands that are missing, the allied fast lands. I think the fact that your, like, for example, blue-red mana has 2 more dual lands, like 2 more playable dual lands than your like blue-black mana, because you don't have a fast land. And if you really want, you don't have a pain land. And if you have fast land, then you won't play pain land, but at least having a pain land might alleviate some issues. But fast lands are by far the most important, and I really, really hope that WotC will reprint fast lands, allied fast lands into Pioneer as fast as possible. I think those are by far the most important things. And then after that, a decent 2 mana counterspell. As Sodek said, a lot of time like blue decks are just like blue-red Narset is basically a tap-out deck. You have like 1 counter spell in your main deck. And then after board, of course, you board into counter spells against decks that you want counters again, but I do think that Mana Leak would be super cool in Pioneer. I think that's the card that's right on the power level of Pioneer. And if not Mana Leak, then something comparable, like, for example, Miscalculation, which is counter unless they pay 2 and you have cycle 2, so like double sensor, let's call it. Or Evasive Action, I think the card is called. It's a 2 mana league with Domain, so like it's pay 2 with a Shockland, pay 3 with a Triumph, whatever.
That would be nice.
Like Mana League is a bottom line, and I would really like to see Mana League in this format. I think, like, for example, my friend suggested Remand. I think Remand would be too strong in Pioneer. I think Remand would be obnoxious in like blue-red decks. Like just Remand into Narset, it sounds super cool, super strong. But yeah, I think fast lands and Mana League. And overall, I am enjoying the format. I do think that Mono Green is a bit too strong, and it might end up getting the axe at some point. But I would really like them to not ban anything for the remainder of the year. I would like for them to see how the format is evolving, and the next Pro Tour will be Pioneer, and I think it will happen at the beginning of the next year. And if it's like regular beginning of the year Pro Tour, so like middle of February, I think if you ban things like before the Christmas break, so like if you ban cards in December, then people have 2 months to adapt, and I think it would be cool. Because I don't think you really can ban anything just before the regional championships, which will happen in like middle of November, because people will test all summer and fall for those tournaments, so you can't just sweep the rug from under their legs 3 weeks before the tournament or something. So you basically need to ban cards now or in December, I think, or after the Pro Tour.
And the format is like still open enough to not take any actions, at least for now.
And it's been very refreshing to play a format in which you don't have to kill your opponent's one drop on site because it's Ragavan. I think it's been refreshing.
Yeah, kinda. Like, still killing Elvish Mystic is...
It's important, of course, but this format is much more of a, like, it is much more reminiscent of Standard than it is of Modern. You are playing nice, fair, attrition magic a lot, and it's cool. I like it.
You know what I would love to play? Something like Blue Prison.
Like what?
Like remember a Blue Prison from Standard?
Oh, Blue Prison. Yes.
Yeah, this that could be like this play style would be so cool. Yeah, but like still there are other reasonable decks to play. I would love to play a deck without creatures that's combo and that's good enough. Not like Lotus. Maybe
Blue Prison. Maybe Blue Prison is good. Who knows?
Maybe I should try to
maybe we'll break it. Okay,
another 6.
That's all from us this week. We really wanted it to be as short and concise, and it still is almost an hour. I think we can apologize for it all we want, but I think it will be reality. I think like it's very, very hard for us to make a video that's less than half an hour.
Yeah, our ultimate goal was to end in 30 minutes, and realistic was 45. We still didn't get there, but we
almost made it to 45. So
close enough.
Yep. So as always, all of our links are below in the description. And yeah, we'll see you when we see you. Take care and bye bye.
Okay. Oh. And if you have any opinions or like ideas about the format, don't
give us feedback.
Yeah, because your feedback
and on Discord as well.
Yeah,
your feedback means I think our Discord will soon be open for everybody. I think so.
We have to talk about this.
No, I think we talked about it, but okay, whatever.
Okay, whatever. Give us feedback, because the more feedback we get from you, the better the content is. So
yeah.
I hope you'll love it.
Yeah, and for the second time in this video, goodbye, take care, and see you.
Bye.